Acapulco, Mexico. This is Anarchast.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. I have a great guest coming in. I actually met him when he was my poker dealer at Porkfest a few years ago. And he's one of the co-founders of Copblock, along with Pete Ayre, who we had on Anarchast before when he was right here in Acapulco. It's Ademo Freeman, and he's coming in from somewhere, Ohio, I think. He was just at the Republican National Convention, and I think I saw you in a cop car there. You got arrested again. Very normal for Ademo. We'll talk all about that. If you don't know Copblock, it's unbelievable the growth it's had. And unfortunately, there's a reason why it's growing so much. It's because the cops in the U.S. are absolutely out of control. And these guys have been exposing it so much. It's been so helpful for people to at least know what's going on and see all these horrible things. And actually, I'll ask you about that later, Ademo, if you can handle just seeing this constant just brutality and constant. It really wears on you, and we'll get into that a little bit. But before we get started, Ademo, let me just ask you, how did you become an anarchist?
Ooh, that's a good question. I became an anarchist, what I would call, by following my logical conclusion, my path to the logical conclusion, and the co-founder of Copblock.org, Pete Ayre, him and I met up in late 2008, early 2009, on a project that he was doing with Jason Talley at the time, and that was called Motorhome Diaries. And that idea was to travel the country searching for freedom. And right off the rip, I'll tell you, we did not find it. But we spent 7 months in an RV together, traveling the country, doing that website, vlogging essentially. And at that time, when I met up with them, I would have considered myself a constitutionalist. It didn't take me but a few months of hanging out with Pete Ayre and Jason Talley to realize that not only is a limited government better, but no government, the individual self-government, voluntarism, is even better. And so even though I held on to having a military defense, my roads, and maybe a justice system, even though it had abused me so badly, I did let go of a lot of other things. So the transition was much quicker than it is usually for some. You know, they say 6 months to a year before you ditch minarchy to an anarchist, and I don't think I was a minarchist for more than 1 or 2 months.
Yeah, I think you could put almost anyone in a RV with Pete Ayre, and within a month or two, they're pretty much going to be a voluntarist.
Most certainly. The big key was he handed me I Must Speak Out, which is a collective of essays from various authors, but led by Carl Watner, who runs the voluntarist.com, and that smashed every last thread of anything of the state I thought was good. So Pete pushed it, and Carl Watner drove it home.
That's great. And let's talk about Copblock. A big fan of it. It's got almost 2 million likes on Facebook. It's gone absolutely massive. And as I pointed out earlier, it's unfortunate it has. But the reason is because the police state in the U.S. is absolutely unbelievable. But I love that you took human action, you and Pete, and you started this thing. And now it's doing really well. You're even thinking about possibly even getting an office in Colorado and getting a whole team of editors and stuff, just keeping on track of all the police brutality going on out there. But why don't you just tell us why you started it and how you started and how it's gone since then?
Sure. As I mentioned just moments ago, I was doing this project called motorhomediaries.com, and that was with Pete and Jason. When that concluded, I did two things. One, I realized the power of social media and the internet, and that it could be used to connect people, because when I was back in Wisconsin having these ideas that were radical or crazy, I felt alone, and that, I hit a wall when trying to talk to some of my usual social encounters on how far the issues could go. So doing Motorhome Diaries made me realize that the internet had a lot of power in connecting people in that form and not making them feel so distant from others. Second was that I had a experience myself. I consider myself a victim of the war on drugs. That's because I was selling marijuana in my late teens, early 20s, and was arrested, charged with a crime, did jail time, had money stolen from me, property taken from me, and in the name of the state / justice and protecting. And so at the conclusion of Motorhome Diaries, I wanted to put those two things together. I wanted to take the internet and tell people about my experience being a victim of the war on drugs. And so I started Copblock as a Tumblr page to basically share my own story at first. Thanks to the network that Pete and I and Jason have built through Motorhome Diaries, the page got passed around quickly, early, and many submissions came in, and Pete and I got together and, morphed the idea from telling my or any stories to making it a decentralized organization that basically houses police issues. The heartbeat of the police state is at Cop Block. I'm currently wearing an F the Police shirt, and many people are like, you hate the cops or you do whatever. And one of my most common responses to that is, if you think this is what people are saying about the police, then you should ask, why are they this angry? Why are they saying these things? Not so much necessarily be mad at the person wearing the shirt or saying it. It's a much deeper question. And so at Cop Block, being decentralized, we don't control what anyone says or does or make. Copblock.org has editors, but you can start your own website, you can start your Facebook page, and that's really allowed it to boom and grow because people are doing what they feel is right. They're telling the stories that from the experiences they've had, and I believe that's a big part of its success.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's just grown massively. Do you even keep track of how many chapters of Cop Block there is, or anything like that?
Well, we do have try to maintain copblock.org/groups as much as possible. We were over 150 the last time I actually counted, but we've since grown the page, Pete primarily, to adapt other cop watchdog groups like Peaceful Streets, We Cop Watch, and so on. So there's at least 250 listed cop watch groups over at copblock.org/groups.
That's great. And for people who don't know much about Cop Block, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you guys have been doing, maybe some of the activism you've been doing, some of your success stories?
Well, in the earlier days, I think what Pete and I did really well was boots to the ground. We weren't just guys who said film the police. We went out and did it. And we weren't people who said, one of the reasons why I started at Cop Block instead of like joining Cop Watch, which was existent at the time, is because I felt the need to engage the police. With my experience in being a victim of the war on drugs, I didn't want to stand by and just point a camera at somebody, which is what Cop Watch advocated, with a more centralized hierarchy than exists at Cop Block. And so I wanted to be able to say, hey, officer, I think that's wrong. I don't think you should do that. That's a drug raid in my community. You guys are just stealing stuff. And so I think that when we first started our videos, our notoriety came from our willingness to do what we say. And then what we were saying was really just, it was off, people hadn't seen videos like that. To tell a cop that he shouldn't be arresting somebody, or that he's a road pirate for extorting people at a traffic stop, and saying that while he's there, and Pete and I both have been arrested several times for merely pointing cameras at us. But, with our language and how we would interact, a lot of people would say we deserved it, or that we're just rabble-rousers. But, at the end of the day, we're talking about the service of protection. These were people that Pete and I and others in the community are forced to pay for. And, if you were getting a bad service at a restaurant, if your food came undercooked, you most certainly say something. And so I advocated that approach. And I think in the earlier years, that was some of our more successes. Putting out these videos, humanizing cops, and we've grown now to, I think, the call flood aspect is one of our more powerful aspects to this day, as well as the diversity that exists. And the call flood was something we instituted shortly, around the 2012 era, when, if there was a police department that did something wrong, and a lot of times this resulted in arrests from Pete and I, but we would call flood that place. We would have all our friends, we'd list the public phone numbers of these places and call them. And in several cases, all around, but to myself particularly, those actions were able to get charges released from you. Once a case starts in the United States in this criminal justice system, it's really hard to get it to stop unless like the district attorney or some motion from a judge gets it to end. But while you're in police custody and you've just been arrested, not officially charged, especially for egregious things, if they feel the public is watching, and that there's somebody that's really upset about this stuff, they can, I've been literally thrown out of jail before charges have been officially processed, just to avoid, the PR mess that would come from the wrongful arrest.
Yeah, I was once I was in St. Kitts, and I kind of got set up by some cops, and they wanted to extort me, and they took me to the police station, and I was just sitting there on my phone, and I was telling the police chief, I'm like, this is ridiculous. You guys are the criminals. I just got kidnapped and extorted, and actually they tried to beat me up a little bit, and I just got on Facebook, and I just said, I'm in jail in St. Kitts, and the phones just started ringing, and by the morning they actually kept me all night because they said they already had charged me, so I had to go see a judge, and they said, oh, it's Christmas too, so it might be a few weeks. And I was like, I'm not staying here. And and the phone started ringing. And by the morning, the president called of St. Kitts, and he said, let him go right now.
Right.
It works. We shine the light on them. It's quite amazing. They do a lot of this stuff because, they all get paid, right? This whole system is so nefarious for that reason, including all the lawyers. There's only a few decent lawyers that I've ever met, and one's Mark Victor. But most of them, they're all part of the game. They all know it's a game. They all know they're all just going to get paid. They don't care if they ruin someone's life. But if you shine light on it, and they know that everyone's sort of watching it, they'll quite quickly let a lot of people just go especially if it was a victimless crime. And if it was a victim crime, then I don't think anyone would be calling anyway. We definitely don't support anyone doing anything to hurt anybody. But if they've been arrested on any number of all the charges they always do, including resisting arrest, which is the funniest one to be charged with. The only charge you get charged is resisting arrest. They'll quite quickly let a lot of people go. And I've seen that happen with numerous people, including yourself. I've seen you posted on Facebook, and then some guy gets out right away. So it's a great network and a great way to help people.
Yeah, it really matters when the early stages starts. We're in an election year here in the United States, and the higher up you go, Hillary or Trump, none of them care about what the people think. You could call, flood, or petition these people all day long, and it'll just get shredded or thrown in the trash. It doesn't matter. But on these smaller levels, local police departments who have to go to the grocery store, who have to fill up at the gas station where you do, and even if the calls aren't local, they might not, they understand that the public's perception of them is highly important when they're the boots that are on the ground. And so it's highly recommended, besides the video camera, and with this being the live streaming era, when Pete and I started in 2010, first of all, it was a 50-50 chance you point a camera at a cop, you are going to a jail cell. That's really not the case anymore. You can almost film just about anywhere. It would be now subjected to if the individual cop. You still have cops that lose their cool and lock people up, and they try to do it for other reasons now. They catch all disorderly conduct and so on. But back then, we didn't have live streaming capability like we do today. There's a number of apps, Bamboozer, Cell411, and so forth, that live stream. Back then it was just quick, which barely even exists today without being a paid feature. And so that's highly important too, because now you can live stream like we did for Brett Sanders, a guy who runs a website, don'tcomply.com, as well as part of Texas Cop Block. He was arrested on the side of the road. By the time he got to the police station, the phones were ringing off the hook. Within an hour, he was released. He did get charges, but normally they might have held him, make him see the judge the next day, and harassed him a little more for standing up for his rights. Instead, they were like, oh man, we're going to deal with this in court anyways. We might as well kick him out right now. And that story, different from the past, is that he was able to live stream. And so I saw that as it was happening. And like you mentioned, you were in the jail when the phone calls started coming. I've been there as well. This happens before they even arrive. And so utilizing technology with live streaming and call flood is a win-win-win.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've had Virgil Baduva on, who made the Cell411 app. If you haven't seen that episode, we'll try to put a link up here to it. Everyone should have that on their phone. And if you live in the U.S. especially, that's just the most risky place in the world to be kidnapped by far. It's got the most people in rape camps and in prisons by far, way more than any other country in the world. And actually, a funny story, Sasha Daygame, who's a past Anarchast guest and an Acapulco speaker, he was here in Mexico, and he said, I'm going to go to the U.S. And I'm like, I wouldn't, man. Like, be careful. And he thought, he kind of shrugged it off. He's like, you're always saying stuff like that. And I'm like, it's true. And so he went, and he was in the airport, and he didn't have his contact lenses in, and he walked out of the exit door, and he didn't really realize it. And then he asked someone, he said, oh, am I not supposed to come out here? And they're like, no. And so he just walked back in. He got on the plane. The FBI shows up, takes him off the plane. He's in jail for at least 1 day. They're still actually harassing him. The TSA is still investigating the incident. And, that can happen in the U.S. And he didn't have that app on his phone. If he did, we probably would have already been call flooding. So everyone should get that on their phone, absolutely. And that's one way you can kind of protect yourself from this unbelievable police state.
Yeah, and Cell411 is so great because the police state, as you mentioned, but it also has just basic emergency features, the ability to call someone for repairs, rides, and they're doing a lot of upgrades now with the integrations to social media, as well as like panic situations where you need to turn on your phone really quick. And so a multitude of uses there, but mainly having the ability to live stream could really be the difference between spending a week, a couple days in jail, because people find out at that moment. And with Cell411, the people you want to find out at that moment. The people you know and trust that are going to do something about it. And those are all key features.
Yeah, absolutely. So I brought it up earlier. I've seen so many of these police brutality videos. It's unbelievable. It's just, I don't even know how you keep up with them all. Do you ever kind of get a little depressed seeing all these things? I find myself kind of feeling that way sometimes. I just wonder if you feel that way.
Yeah, I mean, my cop blocking has kind of, evolved. And so I remember, I'm not on the streets as much as I used to be. So I do spend more time behind the scenes. So from 2010 to, I bet you, early 2012, I blogged 7 days a week, 1 or 3 stories a day. Pete, nearly the same. And that was a time where I really felt burnt out. Not only are we blogging that many number of text blogs, but you were creating most of the content, the original videos that we took. And so it's editing, uploading, storing, etc. As well as I mentioned, with some of our demeanor and it being new at the time, now you see people that are just going off on cops and they're handling it when they have a video camera for the most part. So there was a lot of arrest for me in that time. And in the end of 2012, I believe, I was facing my second, third, and fourth felony wiretapping charge out of New Hampshire. Pete and I had just beat our wiretapping charges in Massachusetts. I had done 16 days on a contempt charge for telling off a judge. Anyways, I did get burnt out on that aspect. Then, when you read all these stories and we get a lot of submissions, sometimes I feel really bad when I have to tell folks, your case isn't that good, or without video, there isn't much. And so those are really hard times as well. Today, though, I don't get as burnt out as much is because I've learned to get some balance, as well as with the creation of the Cop Block Network, which is an idea, in short, to get those who have been active through these Cop Block offshoots to work together. We have a varying degree of skill sets. And so if we work together, we can create more polished content, more well-rounded content. And so thanks to this idea that I came up with at the end of 2014 to create this Cop Block Network, which now has editors for the website, regular contributors, as well as, we work together on like overreaching plans. This allows everybody, not only myself, to take a little time off, to go do some of the things you like. You don't have to read every submission. I don't have to read every email that comes in. And that's what really beats you up, is like, I'm either feeling bad that I have to tell people their story, I can't do much for them from a far location, or I get numb to the most recent shooting. And so I'm glad that I've been able to get to the point where I don't have to feel that numbness, and that it can still be real and bring the passion out that's there.
Yeah, I totally hear you. I've been burnt out so many times in the last few years, and I've realized I have to have a bit more balance. I've been working a little less. You just have to do that. You just can't keep going all the time. But we are passionate about what we're doing, so you do want to keep doing it, but you have to find that balance. I know you were just recently in a squad car again at, I think, the RNC, and I was watching a little bit of your video. You're doing some sort of chalking on the sidewalk, and interestingly enough, it was Joe Biggs of InfoWars came up and poured water all over the chalk. So you got like these alternative media people who are actually on the side of the cops. What was that all about?
It was very surreal. And so those are actually two separate incidences. The one was on Monday of the RNC, day one. And I believe I was, at least unofficially, the first person detained at the RNC. And so we showed up me and some of the other folks from the Cop Block Network. That's Josh Hawkins from Iowa Cop Block, Kelly Patterson from Nevada Cop Block, Uncle Bob from Portland Cop Block, and some others. And so when we got out there, we decided to do what we do a lot of, which is called chalking the police. It's where we use children's chalk on the sidewalks around and or concrete structures near public buildings, primarily police stations. And so at the RNC, this would make a lot of sense. It's cost effective, it gets a message out, and it doesn't damage any property. And depending where you are, it's technically not illegal, although I have done time in jail for it. And so on the very first day we went around doing that, and I went to do a police barrier, and there was 5 of them in a row, which was perfect for badges don't grant extra rights. And that was my intention, but I never got further than B in badges. At that point, a bunch of officers started running towards me, and at first I thought it was just over the chalk, which really would have been silly. But I guess a police officer down the road told them that we had, like, weapons of some sort, which is why the officer said he wanted to see my hands, but it was just chalk. But yes, I was detained then at that time once they realized that it was just chalk. Then they detained me to see if I could chalk. They called over a van of white shirts, which was like superior officers, illegally searched my bag, but luckily didn't do a very good job of searching me because they left me with my cell phone. So once they put me in the back of the car, not in handcuffs, I took my cell phone out of my pocket and started live streaming, which made for some really interesting video because then the bigwigs show up and I'm asking them questions and not consenting to searches in my bag. And they're going through it anyways. And his response actually was, well, you're in the event zone. Well, the event zone was actually their convention. And I'm not a Republican, and I'm definitely not invited to the Republican National Convention. And so, like, I was literally a block away from the event zone. So it just magically moved a block at that moment. And so they searched my bag. At the time, I thought they confiscated my chalk, which is why we stopped. But later in the day, I found that they just had wrapped it up in a thin blue line flag, which is kind of funny. Like I carried a thin blue line flag there in case I was going to do a burning, but they wrapped it in there. So when I looked in, I didn't think I had the chalk, and then when I got home and like unsorted your bag, you find it. So it was the following. It was 2 days afterwards because the day in between, I carried a sign that said "fuck your badge," but we can talk about that next. But the Joe Biggs thing is that, yes, we went back to the entrance area where we were chalking again, things like badges don't grant extra rights, the police are the world's largest gang, right at the feet of a police line that would form to let the convention contestants or attendees go in. Contestants is probably better anyways. But to let them go in. So we were chalking things, and out of nowhere, all these men with like beards and tighter cuts and tattoos could come up and start pouring water all over. And sure enough, it's Joe Biggs and a bunch of InfoWars reporters. And it's ironic because a little while before that, I was filming Alex Jones with Joe behind him saying these protesters that were trying to interrupt his speech his presentation were trying to squash his speech. And then Joe Biggs and all these other, people of InfoWars were squashing our speech by washing it out. And so, like, it was really ridiculous. There's actually a video that I'm working on editing before I get up here. That's why I got my green screen here, so I can do it Tosh Boy style, because I'm going to say, like, how many, cop-sucker phrases can the InfoWars people say in 20 seconds? Because it was all the usual stuff. And that was one of the bigger things, at least from being on the ground at the Republican National Convention, was how disappointed all the InfoWars people were in InfoWars. The people who came there to support them and stuff are mad that he's endorsing Trump and mad that they have these, their bigotry and their hate speech and their racial agendas. And so it was kind of interesting. So not surprising when I hear all that to see these guys act that way. They resorted to asking us if we had jobs and if we'd ever served in the military, the usual I bow to the state mentality. Yet they also will rant and rave that, like, the elite and elitists are, like, going to kill us all. So it's ironic to me because if they are clearly using government to do it. And these guys are clearly supporting government. They're back the blue, support the police. They wrote that on the ground once. And this guy stood there like this. He's like, I'm a fit Army Ranger. I'll block you guys all day long. And within 2 minutes, he put his guard down, and one of my buddies from Cleveland Cop Block dumped water all over. He felt really bad.
Chalk wars.
Yeah, and that's what I told him too. I said, hey, man, you guys can pour water on whatever you want. It's public property. That's tragedy in the commons. I don't really care. You are the ones that look childish, because some people say I look childish for using chalk. But I think when I write badges don't grant extra rights or you guys are murderers, That's not childish at all. But I offered them chalk. I said, I'll give you chalk. We can chalk it out. We could have a chalk war.
Let's chalk it out.
Adults face to face, because you have to name call me, or they like to say that I smoke meth, and it's because I have crooked teeth. So it's like, first of all, it's not something I haven't heard before, and it's not a logical argument to the fact that there's a police state. So it's irrelevant, and if they don't want to have a logical conversation, then I'll give them chalk, and they can chalk. They love cops all day long. Instead of acting like little kids.
Yeah, that was funny to watch.
The live stream version was very choppy, so I've got them making themselves look like pretty big hypocrites, and I plan to do a pretty good video on it.
Yeah, if that's up before we put this live, maybe we'll throw a little bit of it in here.
Wicked soul. Wicked spirit. Look at him. Oh, yeah.
Where's that?
Like shooting dogs?
Ex-girlfriend you shot, or was it somebody else?
How much did the city pay for that?
Huh? Tell us about that woman you shot.
This guy shoots women and dogs. That's why he doesn't have his name tag on.
On Christ the solid rock I stand, all other ground.
So you don't have anything but say about that dog and the woman you shot?
You're a fucking disgrace.
Lieutenant?
Why's that? He shot a woman and a dog. Google it.
Heroes. You guys are
That guy in the white shirt shot a woman.
Women?
He shot a woman. Do you know about that? Do you know anything about that?
These guys put their life on the line every day.
By shooting innocent dogs?
I don't ask for that. I don't even want that service. I don't want them to do it. I hope they stop. Not them. That's all that matters. Hadn't called them. Didn't call them the other day when they watched someone assault me.
I can do this all day, man. I'm a fit Army Ranger. I can do this all day. All day long. So you can bully a woman around all day. Oh, I can just stand in her way. That's impressive. So you guys can bully the police. You can bully them? Oh, yeah, we're
bullying the police. The guys with guns. We're bullying guys with guns.
I'm all quivery, girl. I'm not nervous at all. Yeah, you certainly are. You're the one that was just bullying a girl.
Oops. You put your guard down, sir.
Yeah, I know.
Must have been with the United States.
Army Ranger. Yeah. They were busy bullying a woman, so they didn't.
Yeah, so you're working away. Unfortunately, you're not lacking for things to do with the police state. What's your opinion on how things are going? Are people starting to wake up to this major problem? I've definitely noticed some things myself, even at the Democratic National thing. A lot of some of them are Black Lives Matter, which a lot of that's backed by Soros and all that. But some of them are just really unhappy about the police state. So you can actually see people waking up to this problem now. Do you see that?
I do see them waking up to it, and I see them waking up to it in regards to being more knowledgeable. And so they like I mentioned, even just 6 years ago, if you filmed the police, a cop would come and talk to you. If I pointed, but so many other copsuckers would as well. You didn't get very much praise for filming the police at the time. Now there's sometimes, I go out and I film the police and, Cop Block, we love you. Hey, all right. Add that to the fact that the number of egregious actions by police caught on video. So people are instinctively now grabbing the camera, putting it up, and I think that's where the growth has been, and that is most certainly needed and it is most certainly appreciated. It's also why the workload is so much for some of us Cop Block Network contributors. Before when we get submissions and we get at least 50 to 100 a week, one or two would have a video. Now every other has some sort of video or news source on the matter where the victim themselves is giving an account of the situation, even if after the fact, but it's still firsthand. Where I think we're lacking is something that I tried to address at the RNC with my fuck the badge sign, fuck your badge sign. And that's that there's no substance. It's that it's the police are murdering people, the police are racist, but what should we do about it? Why? There's things that are said that are not really solutions but distractions, like community review panels that have citizens on board. It's a great Band-Aid, or whether or not police should be forced to wear body cams are both great Band-Aids, but they're not solutions. Even the police will hide their own video cameras. The Chicago police, probably some of the worst in the country, have been throwing their microphones onto the roofs. So yeah, you have audio, but you're not knowing what they're saying, and that's a beneficial to the cop, because he can say, I kept telling him to stop resisting, and he was walking towards me with a spoon, so I shot him, and stuff like that. And so where I think it lacks is the substance. And what I don't think people are realizing is that there is no one-size-fits-all answer to one-size-fits-all protection services. We are 300 million people plus here in the United States, and we are never, ever going to agree on what type of policing we want. Yet, that's where the conversation is at. We need to do this. This has to happen, and I want to force all these cops to make you do it, or these politicians to make you do it. And what I want to say is, watch the videos, read about the police department, see what your protection services are doing for your area. Come to your own conclusion and decide at the end of the month, will you cut that check? Because if you think Phillip in Minnesota and Alton in LA deserve to die, then more power to you. I'm not going to argue with you. I don't think they did. I wouldn't pay for that service. I would not be sent, if I was paying those men to protect me or that company, the following month, they would have had some serious questions to answer from me, or they would have lost my business, most certainly. And that's all we really need to do. Everyone wants to complicate it more or force those ideas on everyone else. Less is more. You come to your conclusion, and then if these killer cops can still get paid, then so be it. But I don't think anybody, even these cop suckers at InfoWars, are going to pay for killer cops.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the whole problem, as always, is government, central planning. It's basically sort of like a communist-style system, and that's what always happens when you have a monopoly. They extort people to get paid. If they do a bad job, they even get more money. It's the exact opposite of the private market. So that's the real issue. And it's so funny to see some of these guys, like Joe Biggs and all these guys, as you mentioned, who've been in the military and all that, and but they love the cops, and it's like, but if you say, well, do you like communism? Like, no way, I hate communism. It's like, well, that's what it is. It's central planning, and it's a monopoly. And why don't we have private services like threat management in every city, things like that? And I think that's just where we have to take the conversation to the next level with people like that. I think they're still just brainwashed, propagandized. All the movies and all the TV shows about all the hero cops, that's fantasy. There's very few hero cops in real life.
Right, exactly. And that's why when I was at the RNC on day 2, I had on one side of my sign, fuck your badge, and on the other side it says, you do not need a badge to protect people. You do need one to protect the government. And so when people would lose their minds as I was walking on the street, how dare you? They're heroes. You should respect them. And I say, do you realize that that's what they tell you? Because they have to tell you that. Because, most people were carrying some sort of item from some sort of business in their hand. So I'd say, you got to go get that item or that service voluntarily. We don't get to do that here. Should I not be able to do that with protection? Of course they all agree. And then I try to tell them that the reason why they don't allow it is because, and they brainwash you to think these guys are heroes, is because if you realize that just like with every other service, it should be voluntary, and then it is voluntary, right off the bat, let's just say 10% of people stop paying for police. Well, the remaining 90% aren't all going to be able to pay the 10% increase. So now another number has to go. And once these numbers fall, the police don't have any teeth anymore, which means the government doesn't have any teeth anymore, and the government collapses. So if the government has no enforcers, what does it matter what they write on paper? And so that's why you're told that the police are brave and awesome and courageous and they protect you. Because if you don't believe that, then you believe that they should voluntarily persuade you to give or peacefully and voluntarily persuade you to give you their money, and that it should be, voluntary interaction. And once that happens, you realize that they're not needed. And so it's a big problem for them to hash out, and it's something that people have to work through in their minds. Yeah,
absolutely. I don't know how it's going to happen, but it has to happen at some point. It's just how we get there. Yeah, it is happening.
Right, because right now people are more filming the police, and then right now they're asking the wrong questions, but they're asking questions.
Right.
So, I don't know how long it takes the masses. We talked about 6 months for a year to become an anarchist. I don't know how long it takes people to realize that you just, once they're looking at the system of policing, even on the narrow, or the government as the whole, to realize that it's not fixable and that the solution is more options, not, more control.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite videos, one of my favorite speeches I've seen is by Mark Passio about order followers, and it really gelled in my mind what the real problem in the world is today. It's not necessarily the politicians, and even people like Larkin Rose has said this. He's like, I don't care about some crazy guy with a mustache. It's the million people who follow him and do whatever he says are the problem, the order followers. And I've noticed with a lot of people when they post some sort of anti-police stuff, you get all these police people come on and their families. The families are just almost even worse than the cops in like getting super angry at you for saying that they're not perfect and that that they're doing a bad job. And it's the order followers and their families and the people who support them. And I'm sure you've seen that so many times.
Oh yeah, it's bad. We just did a story about a Chinese restaurant, I believe it was in Washington State. And the owner's son told cops that they shouldn't come back there. And then he was on the news like apologizing because all the blue came out and like hit him hard right off the bat, and they like attacked his Facebook page. And it's like, it really shows you the mentality of the people in that field. And so it makes you wonder too, how far gone is it? Or, I believe that some of these officers will put down their badge, but I also believe that some of them might continue their jackboot ways. So hopefully not.
Yeah, that's the other thing too, is people need to stop selling their soul. That's basically what you're doing. But there's, you hear from religious people and all this stuff, you sell your soul to the devil or whatever. Actually, so many people do it. Almost everyone in the world does it to an extent. It's when you don't do the moral right thing, and you do it because you're getting paid, and that's what they're getting a paycheck to do immoral acts. So that's actually a form of selling your soul, and we need to kind of communicate that. And I know it's really hard because these cops are people as well. They have families. If they quit their job, they're not going to have any money. So we need to figure out a way to transition some of them. Not actually, most of them we don't even want to be private security, but some way to get transition that a little bit. And some people just to stand up, like Barry Cooper, past Anarchast guest, spoke in Acapulco. He was a drug cop. He was the top drug cop in the U.S. until one day he realized it was immoral and he just quit. And then he started busting cops, which is beautiful. We just need more people like that.
Yeah, that's what I've said. I try to, one of my favorite things to say to cops these days when I am out in the street is, I want you to take my money. Tell me what your skill set is. I'll ask them about the name. Are you a good traffic cop? Are you a person that find stolen property? Are you a person who will, if somebody mugged me in the streets, you will help me find out who they were and maybe more? Tell me what your skill set is, because that's another thing. Cops are tasked to do these blanket jobs as a cop, but they have skill sets that are more defined. Not every cop, wants to sit on a road and keep drivers safe. Some cops probably do. Some cops probably appreciate investigating traffic accidents and find, some sort of joy in coming to those conclusions. But that's what I say to them. I want you to take my money. And more so, people say, well, why don't you start doing this or that? And the thing is that's not my passion. That's not what I want to do. We need cops to put down the badge and say, I'll start my own protection agency and I'll offer those services. But, my skill set is where it's at right now. And that's, I create content. I use video cameras. I try to get people thinking. I don't know how to protect people. I don't know how to secure a home or property past my knowledge, not as a profession. And so that's why we need cops. We got people filming, we got people asking questions. Where we really need to fill the void is getting more Barry Coopers and others who've put the badge down and provide the alternative, like Dale Brown up there at Detroit Threat Management and stuff.
Yeah, Dale Brown's going to be speaking in Acapulco coming up too, and open invitation to you as well, Ademo, if you want to come down and talk. We'd love to have you. And even with Virgil Viduva, it's also going to be in Acapulco with the Cell411 app. I think they're going to start making it so you can actually sell your services on there. So you could be in an area and you could be a big guy and you're really good at, you're tough, you're a big guy, and you like to fight maybe even, but you want to actually do the moral thing. You want to actually do the right thing and actually protect people, not actually go around and beat people up who don't deserve it. You could go on Cell411 and start selling your services in a local area. I could see this really starting to blossom. I could see it actually happening, as you pointed out.
Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, I did have an idea a couple years back for cop block protection, and I still think it's a viable idea. It just maybe was a little before its time at that time, and I was also burnt out at that time as well, so that was putting a lot on my shoulders. But basically, cop block protection was to basically offer like social media services to anybody, and then it could grow to ultimately provide, like with so many offshoots, like Cop Block Texas could take their person out on the ground and go to a home and say, this is how you secure it. Here are some free tips. If you want, I can install a security camera. Here's a local firing range in town that'll teach you gun safety, or yourself if you have that skill set. And essentially you train people up to protection, be taken care of by themselves, and then they could turn around and then to ask the state to stop extorting them for that money. So essentially you go from, cop block protection is just if you get pulled over or harassed by the police, you have some sort of media presence, or it could have grown into that thing. But again, that really wasn't my skill set. I don't really, I would need cops to come in and want to do that with me, or anybody who has that, maybe not necessarily cops, but former cops or something that would want to do that with me because that's their skill set, that's their passion,
Yeah, absolutely. I could see it all happening. It'd be so cool. Everyone's on Cell411. You have a problem. Some guy's outside of your house. He wants to beat you up or something. You just go on there. You look through the list. You find the guy with the best reviews. This guy's really good. Always had he really helped us this one time. Call him up. He comes over. Things get subdued somewhat.
Right.
You give him a good rating. Pay him.
Yeah, maybe he de-escalates, but he's also capable if physical force needs to be used. But in this situation, he'd be more likely to the police walk up, bang, bang, bang. They walk up, hey, how's it going? What can we do? Let's just get you out of here. This isn't your property. You don't have a right just to trample on people's property, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I'm very interested to see the path for not only Cell411, but whatever anyone else comes up with. Not so much app-wise, but anything. I think there's a really right time in the protection services field whatsoever. If that's video cameras, firearm training, self-defense classes, it's really something people should be considering putting on the to-do list.
Yeah, absolutely. It is happening, and you've been a part of it. So thank you for everything you've done at Cop Block. Keep up the great work. Why don't you let us know where people can find more information on you and any way that people can be of help to you?
Well, copblock.org is the best spot, and there's copblock.org/resources if you're just getting started, copblock.org/groups if you're looking for other folks, and copblock.org/network if you want to get involved and network and work with folks who have been cop blocking for years, myself and some of these others from all over the country. 3 great URLs that should get you started.
That's great. And so another great episode of Anarchast. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, share down below. That's how we can get this information out there. A lot of people are looking for answers, and we have the answers right here. We just need more people to know about them, and then we can continue to, you can't destroy a system that's already in place. What you do is you create a new system that makes the old system obsolete, and that's what we're trying to work towards. Try to get outside of this communist central planned monopoly use of force organization that has a track record of being the biggest threat. Actually, right now in the U.S., they are the biggest thieves in the U.S. is through asset forfeiture, where cops just find some reason and then take your house. They are the biggest thieves in the U.S. So if people are worried about what will we do without cops, it's like, well, they are the biggest criminals in the U.S. Not to mention the government, who's extorting you for about half your money every year as well. We'll try to get rid of that as soon as we can as well. So that's it for Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. Peace, love, and anarchy.
From Acapulco, Mexico, this is Anarchast.